Hey everybody, so in today's episode we have a great guest. His name is Ricardo Ghekiere, and he's the founder of SaaSmic.io, a growth marketing agency focused on delivering full funnel marketing for B2B SaaS companies. He also runs one of the largest European community of B2B founders and marketers, B2B salespeople and so on. And he is a co-author of B2B LinkedIn content marketing book, which is a proven 15-step process to acquire and nurture leads on LinkedIn from scratch. He started a couple of companies, and to be honest, we're gonna focus on LinkedIn today because I've been looking at his profile and he has some crazy engagement. I think last time I checked, you had like 229 comments on one post, which is insane to me. So I need to figure out what's going on there. And I just want to start off by, maybe you can give us some context again, like what are you focusing on right now? And we can jump into exactly the definition of social selling, because I think that's the good starting point to define what is a social selling as a definition. Many people don't have experience in this, and this podcast is listened by B2B SaaS guys, but also agency owners, consultants who are in complex B2B sales. So definitely it's going to help all of these guys. So what is social selling? And then maybe some background. How did you get into this space? And we can just go from there then.
Dive in. All right, perfect. I'll start a little bit with the definition of social selling to me, because there's a lot of, just like the word growth hacking, there's a lot of, noise about what is growth hacking, what is social selling, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I spoken to a lot of sales guys, a lot of marketers, and for them, sometimes social selling is about, sending a LinkedIn request, which doesn't contain any social selling or any selling in it. And then they send up a follow-up request, which has a value proposition or whatever, or a link or like a clickbait or whatever you want to call it. For me, that's not about social selling. For me, social selling is about connecting with the right people and sharing content that helps them move forward, basically. So you attract and nurture the right people at the right time with the relevant content, I would say. So it's not about just, the message. It's not about selling like in the second message. It's really about connecting, figuring out who you can help in the long run, and also what content they need to move forward, and making that balance between each other.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So you're not talking about sending invitations and messages. You're talking about attracting the leads sort of in inbound way, right? Because you can do it both ways. You can do it outbound and inbound on LinkedIn. So
yes.
Which one do you think has a bigger impact from your experience doing it, the classic outbound way, even maybe smarter outbound, or kind of building out your network and giving them content or whatever they need, and then getting an inbound, inquiries from that?
Yeah, sure. So social selling for me is two parts, right? There's one is the outbounds. So that's the first stage. Well, the first stage is actually not sending an outbound, but it's really trying to figure out who you can help. I think a lot of companies fail that step. They just type in, let's say our audience is B2B marketers. So they put a B2B marketer in LinkedIn, they get 3,000 results or 300,000 results, and start sending out, generic messages to everybody. Where we say, look, take a step back, figure out who you can help, segment your market so your message is really clear, and you can really segment based on, different needs, different job roles, different countries, different things you heard about them. So that's probably the first step, which is the outbound step. And instead of just sending them straight to a landing page, you're just trying to build connections with them, because you figure out who you want to help first. And then your role is to establish a nice relationship with them, not straight to selling, because some people are there with deals of like higher than 500 euros, maybe 5,000 euros, maybe 1 million euros. You can't just sell just from one message saying, hey, you want to buy from me, because they don't know you, they don't like you, they don't trust you. So what we try to do is we have an approach where we do very targeted outbound without selling anything. We just establish relationships, and our goal is to start a conversation. And then the second part is where we create content that is really relevant for them, because they're building up the right audience. Let's say that your audience or my audience is B2B marketers and founders. I only talk about B2B marketing and founder stuff, but also about my social life, basically. And I try to match that. So basically, if you look at content marketing, just like you would run a Facebook campaign, you would define your audience and you would define your message, and that's the one that needs to click together. So that's basically where you run outbound and inbound at the same time to make it more effective.
Got it. And so you're looking at one thing, it's to start conversation, right? So what's kind of the KPI? Do you actually, is your end goal to book a meeting? Is it to get on the phone? Is that the last kind of KPI you're looking for? Or is it to first initially get a response, go back and forth, and from that kind of figure out if it makes sense to get people onto the call? Because we do the same thing basically. We only focus on outbound though, but we try to just generate some sort of response and just start a conversation without selling. And if it makes sense, let's jump on the call. But that's right, maybe after the fourth or five messages. So what's your take on this?
So yeah, I think one KPI can be book a demo or whatever you want to call it. For me, those are very short-sighted KPIs.
Mm-hmm.
Because you ask an immediate response from the other person. Basically, you're saying, I don't know you, but let's book a demo. And if you look at it from the whole sales funnel, if you look at the whole sales structure, basically there's about 3% that you could make really interested. You would hit them at the right time. They were just looking for a marketing consultant in the B2B marketing space, and they're like, wow, you just reached out on the same time. But that's only 3% of your market. 7%, they would say, hey, maybe, I'm interested, but I don't know, I was really looking for it, but now you're here, maybe we can chat. But the rest, they're going to say, well, I don't know you, I don't like you, I don't trust you. So you only have a hit ratio of maybe 10%, which for some people would say, hey, that's a big market, 10%. I rather focus on the 90% and just getting the whole market, basically. So for us, there's a couple of other KPIs. And for us, the really important KPIs is what we track in our CRM. Is the first thing is how many conversations are we having about our services? What I mean by that is not just saying, hey, this is our services, but really people asking about, so what do you do? What can you help with? So that's one, key identifier that, people are interested in what we do. That's one. So we track that. Secondly is we track the amount of sales opportunities that come from that. So you can say, I'm interested, but there's also, okay, I'm ready to buy. What can you offer? Do me an offer, basically. And then the third, which is really important because you're doing the content marketing with it, you can really see the decrease of the sales cycle. And that's something we track a lot. Like, how fast can we go from we give you an offer until we closed? And that's for me a super important KPI, because only if you don't know me, you don't like me, or you don't trust me, you don't know how good I am, you'll say, well, I have to think about it, and I'll put this to my CEO, and maybe my CEO doesn't know you, he wants to jump on a call, and then you have this long during process, basically. But if you've been building up that authority, it's super fast. Like, biggest close we had is 9 days now, which is like not like 500 euro deals, but a lot more, just because we've been building up that trust so high that they're just like, we want to work with you, just give us an offer. Price was not an issue. Distance was not an issue. There was no issues. It was just like, just give me a structure we can work with. Let's just, start, basically. So that's the last metric we really measure.
Got it. And so you're focused on the 90% of people, right? How much time does it actually take? Because they are not probably interested, that you haven't built a relationship, they don't trust you. How much time does it take to nurture them with content, usually on LinkedIn, to kind of build that trust and from at those 90% of people, right, that are not kind of ready right now to buy or be interested in a call?
So yeah, I'll give you an example of mine. So I post twice a week. That's on Tuesday and on Thursday at 11 o'clock. That's my posting hours, for example. And how much time does it take? It depends on how much time you want to really put into, and how smart you are. If you have to look up a lot of the content, maybe you don't have it. But there's a lot of people that already have content in place and can just refurbish that into LinkedIn content. So there's not a lot of time that goes into it. It's just having two posts ready. How much time does it take? How much time would it take to make your blog post? Which sometimes people spend ages in just creating one blog post instead of just making two LinkedIn posts, which is very short. So in matter of time, it doesn't really take a lot of time to really nurture their clients. It just really, we kind of compare like SEO. If you do your first blog post and you will have 2 likes, which makes sense, it's okay, but you need some time to build out that authority. So basically, LinkedIn content strategy is just like an SEO strategy, but it's less saturated. And less saturated means that if you look at content or LinkedIn content strategy as a whole, you have about 9 billion impressions weekly. And impressions being people scrolling through their phone and, they see one blog post, for example, that's one impression. There's about 500, I would say million. There's a little bit more now, 562, I think, million people on the LinkedIn platform. And there's about 3 million people really creating content. And where I always say, there's also the recruiter people that just, they just say, we're looking forward to hire Java developer. Those are also content creators, for example. So there's like 50% that just waste your time basically with bullshit content. So there's a lot of opportunity left for people that want to create quality content. And it's very easy to stand out of the crowd because there's so much bullshit out there that if you do it right, it's so much easier than building an SEO strategy, basically.
Got it. I think we can frame this like this. I would like to talk about the content strategy for LinkedIn, but before that, what are some fundamentals for your profile that you need to have in place before? Let's assume you have your target audience ready, you exactly know who you're going after, you have everything prepared. Now, just briefly maybe, how should your profile on LinkedIn look like? And from there, what's the basics of that content strategy? Because there are posts, there are articles, there's videos. The algorithm works differently on all of those. So if we can start off by the LinkedIn profile, that would, I think, make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a workshop last week about this, and there was like, okay, well, how do we build a LinkedIn profile? Mm-hmm. And I always say it depends on your personality. So if you look at my LinkedIn profile, there's nothing salesy about it. It's just a story. Because the reason why I got into the social selling, whatever you want to call it, is because I hate selling. I'm really bad at cold calling and spamming people with emails and trying to have measuring click-through rates and all that stuff. I just kind of hate it. I just rather spend my time building content which is relevant for people so they are helpful and they come to me and saying, well, you've solved this small problem with your LinkedIn post. Now I kind of want to get the bigger picture and help me out with the whole strategy, basically. So this is just my personality. And then there's other people that just say, you know what, I'm really the hard selling guy. I have to put in what I do, what we do, how we do it, and the structure. So it kind of depends on your personality. But I always say, just look at, if you're a soft seller, use a story. If you're a hard seller, just put in what you can help with straight away to your target audience, basically. So that's a little bit two things. And then you have the headline, of course, which, you could say what problem you're solving, what you're focusing on. If you're in a niche, focus on saying that we're just focused on this niche because it makes it more relevant to the people landing on your profile. And what I always say, and it always amazes me that most marketers don't know, I don't know if you know, but UTM tags are super relevant because I see a lot of profiles without UTM tags. So you're not able to track the traffic that comes from your LinkedIn profile or LinkedIn, company page back to your Google Analytics, which if you're doing social selling with a bunch of people, makes sense to see which one is performing better than the other one. Because then you can see there's 3 ebooks downloaded by this profile or 4 people downloaded from this profile at that stage. And then you can backtrack that to your LinkedIn post, basically. So you can be really data driven without being, shooting all over the place.
Got it. So that makes sense. And I don't think, building out your profile will be something tough to do. However, what I noticed with your posts, they're kind of long, right? You have one line per post. You start with some sort of story. You immediately build the interest. And at the end, you have a call to action to, hey, let me know in the comments, guys, if you want the book on this or that. And you kind of direct them people to the landing page or something. So talk to me about that content strategy process, whether that's a written post or something like that. How do you, I don't know if you have a copywriting background, but how do you structure that post usually so that it gets a lot of engagement? Because I know it's a lot to do with the algorithm, but also with kind of copywriting. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, I still remember because my girlfriend is actually copywriter. She studied this thing, and I remember her telling me, "It's like, yeah, man, your copywriting sucks." That was a few years ago. And she's like, "Yeah, this sucks." So one is I always say is exercise. So it just like, if you're going to class, you're training your muscles, which is your brain muscles. The same thing goes into copywriting. Your first copywriting sucks. That's that's pure training. But the other part is there is some kind of, structure to it. And that's what we also teach our clients, that there is a certain structure to it. And like you said, you read my post and you said, hey, there's a kind of structure to this. You start with something eye-opening and then you kind of dive deeper. And this is what we call the storytelling framework. And if you look at every single great movie out there, it's always based on the same structure, basically. So the structure is very simple. If you look at, for example, a James Bond movie, and if you watch James Bond movie tonight or maybe in a couple weeks, you'll notice one thing. They will always start with something which is like super powerful. You'll see, James Bond like locked to a chair, and then there's a guy coming over, is like he's gonna kill him. And then what happens is the moment that that's gonna happen, they say 6 months earlier, and the movie starts.
Got it.
Right? So it's the same thing in LinkedIn posting. You start with something eye-opening, which could be refer to the James Bond movie. Some people would call it clickbaiting. I just call it storytelling, basically. That you start with something that people would be interested in, which would be the James Bond locked to his chair. And then from there, you start your journey to the movie. And there you have the whole hero journey, where you have the problem, then there's a solution, there's things that you learned. And at the end, of course, you have the big learning of, okay, well, I survived the whole James Bond movie. This is the learning I made from it, basically. So this is what we call a little bit the storytelling framework, is you start with an eye opening and you have this whole journey until the call to action comes in. And the reason why we use, the one line of white space is because 57% of all LinkedIn people actually watch LinkedIn on their phones. And making it with white spaces makes it a lot easier to read for people if they're sitting on a toilet or they're on a bus or they're on their car, whatever they watch LinkedIn from. It makes it a lot easier for them to read. So we increase the chance that people actually go to our story and get to that call to action, whatever it is. Download the ebook or go to this page or give me a like or whatever you want to call it. It just increases the chances in making that call to action happen.
Is your goal always to kind of direct people to downloading a certain piece of content at the end? Or do you have a different also approach?
I think out of all the posts we make, 1% is download something from me. That's 1%.
Okay.
So even with clients, we always advise, do not always say, download this, do that. It's just about the inspiration parts. And then you could do it 1 or 2 months, which we call ebook campaigns or whatever we want to call it, is where we really give something of value after. Because you think about it like this: if you've been building up content, which is super relevant, super nice for your audience after 3 months, and then suddenly you see the same guy saying, I wrote an ebook about this topic, imagine how big the chances are that people are interested in what you have to write about. If you would do that every single week, that's like buying a car every single day. The new thing is about, like, if you've been saving up for your entire life to buy that nice car, you're like, yeah, damn, that's what I want. But if that would happen every single week, or you would have all the money in the world to buy every single car, the relevancy is gone. So we try to say, do not always go to call to action or go to this landing page. Focus on quality, and then you will make your campaign at the end, which could be in 2 or 3 months, about launching something big, a lot bigger than just doing a call to action every single day.
Got it. So most of the time it's just basically just giving value, running through the post as a story, and at the end there's no sort of maybe you try to let people know that they can comment below, but there's no page where you're directing them or ebook they need to download or nothing like that.
No, nothing. The thing is about, and LinkedIn has done this wonderfully, I would say. They've done a lot of things wrong, but one thing is that they play on one human factor, which is human curiosity. And imagine that effect you got, like, oh, somebody watched your profile, wondering who this guy is or wondering what he does. And everybody has had this moment where you say, who's this guy? Going to link to his profile and see who this guy is and check him out, basically. So all we do is we play on human curiosity. If you're giving value, a lot of value, you're wondering who is this guy or girl, like what does he do? And you just let human curiosity come into play, and that's it. You're not forcing somebody to buy something from you. You're just playing on his or her human curiosity to dive into your funnel, basically.
Got it. There's also, I mean, we can follow these principles, but there's some stuff that create high engagement regardless of copywriting. So what are some other things that affect how big of a reach will your post have, whether that's the algorithm itself, or is there anything else like the engagement of the comments and likes, maybe something like that?
Yeah, so there's the moment you post something on LinkedIn, there's three phases that happen basically. First is that LinkedIn will scan which type of post it is. Let's example, if it's just a text, if it's just text posts, so there's no links, there's no pictures and no videos, your chances increase a lot more to get the reach you want, basically, because that's the highest reach. Hashtags do not matter at all. Even like maybe some expert would say hashtags matter. Hashtags do not matter. They do not change anything.
So why do they exist, those hashtags?
I think to find content, I would say, or they're going to play in it on the long run. And what I believe that they're using it for, because in last 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, you're actually able to target people based on their interests, which you could use hashtags for B2B marketing, and then you could target these people that write about B2B marketing. So I believe that LinkedIn uses these hashtags in order to increase the relevancy of the ads that they're running, basically. Because since 3 weeks ago, that you can actually interest-based target. So that's why they have the hashtags, I feel. But they do not increase your reach. So that's step one. And if it's like an outbound link compared to just plain text, you know who's going to win. It's definitely the text, because every single platform out there, the only goal is to have more people longer on their platform. They don't want you to get outside the platform. So basically, it depends on which type of post you make. And then it goes to what every single platform also does. It shows it to a certain percentage of your users or your first degree connections, which is about 3 to 7%. And they will show it and say, hey, is this relevant for you? And if they say yes, which is with a like, a comment, or a share, then it will kind of move into the second degree and third degree. And that, increases your chances to make it, bigger post. And then also it kind of gives you points. A like, you could say, as 1 point, a comment is 2 points, and a share is 3 points. And the more points you get, the bigger you reach. It's that simple, I would say.
Got it. And so it's very important for you to have a network of people who are actually your kind of preferred customers or somebody you're targeting, because if you have an irrelevant network and LinkedIn shows it to them, then it's all up for nothing. And that's why I don't think you should accept all the connections you get, because I have a huge network in pharma industry because I used to work in pharma for 3 years and I get nothing. Like, I don't want those people in my network because I'm targeting completely different people right now. And probably
that's why we always say a LinkedIn content strategy does not start with LinkedIn. It starts with basic B2B principles, which is segmentation of your market and finding the relevant people that you're targeting. And that's where you start, not posting something, changing your profile, figuring out how the algorithm works. It does not start there.
Got it. So do you also do paid strategy on LinkedIn? Do you buy, do you do advertising and target people like that based on?
We do it, but in the other way, because I think the biggest mistake that you can make on LinkedIn for paid advertising is copying what we call the Facebook strategy. So every marketer always starts with Facebook or Google Ads, but mostly if you've done Facebook, they'll do the same strategy on LinkedIn, which is most of the time you have these strategies, which is like the 1-1-1 strategy, where you do a lot of video marketing to a very broad audience. And then you retarget the people that engage with it, and then you move them down the funnel. It's a little bit what we call the B2C approach. In LinkedIn, I don't believe the B2C approach works. You cannot target very broad and then see who engages and then retarget them. That doesn't happen. One, because LinkedIn platform is not that advanced yet. But second is because it's not built for that. It's built for who do you want to work with in 1 year, 9 months, or 6 months, and build your strategy from there. So if you have your ICP, you have your market segments, the companies you want to work for, Well, now you can put them into an audience while you're doing your content strategy and your outbound. You could do paid acquisition before you do your outbound, so people already know when you're doing the outbound. So it just reinforces the whole machine. So if you put outbound, like very targeted outbound with content marketing strategy of profiles, and to be clear, it's on profile, it's not on company pages. I would believe company pages are a little dead, but you need them for advertising reasons. And you put that next to a paid acquisition, it just blends in beautifully.
Got it. So with paid acquisition, I notice a lot of people are targeting me with webinars, right? Is that a good strategy, or is it, I don't know, that strategy? What do you think? Because, for example, doing kind of paid strategy, using it as an outbound, sort of like cold email, I don't think that's very smart. So like, what do you think? What's the strategy for paid acquisition on LinkedIn?
Well, it kind of depends on the phase of the people, right? If you're retargeting companies that are already your customers, or you are targeting people that, you know, went to a certain webinar or all that stuff, it depends on what, you know, content relevancy depends on the stage of the people. If you're targeting cold audiences, you need different content compared to if they are, you know, maybe they're not yet your customers, you have long sales cycles, but you still want to, you know, build that trust while you're closing that deal, because that's also what we do, is full funnel marketing. I don't think marketing stops when you know, the lead is done to the salespeople, but it kind of still continues there, because you can still run ads, you can still, you know, send them a bottle of champagne, whatever your industry is, while you're closing that deal. And even after you're closing a deal, you can still show relevant content to them. So it kind of depends on the deal stage of your companies, basically. And that's the beauty of B2B marketing, right? I mean, you can really focus on, these are my customers, so I'm going to show them this ads, and these are people I want to have as customers inside the pharma industry, because we segmented them. We're going to send them a very relevant content just for pharma industry.
Got it. Okay, and so what about the video on LinkedIn? Because that's, I know the native video on LinkedIn platform, not directing from YouTube. It's I've heard some stuff that it's really great, but you've mentioned text-based is really the best strategy. So for posts. So what do you think about video on LinkedIn right now?
So I believe video is going to be big. Even like if you look at America, for example, they started with live streaming. We don't have it in Europe yet, but it's coming. I'm pretty sure about it, but they started live streaming in America. Kind of curious to see how that works out, because there's a lot of Facebook live streaming, Instagram live streaming. There's a lot of platforms already doing the live streaming part, but I still believe like LinkedIn audience is very different than a Facebook audience on terms of how they perceive the platform and how they want to be on the platform. In Facebook, you're more the fun guy, and LinkedIn, you try to be a little bit more professional. I don't try to be very professional, but you know, a lot of people try to be professional, or they use it as a professional thing. So if you look at, because we've been testing, you know, content for about almost 2 years now, and we really have the numbers of, okay, what works, what increases your reach, what decreases your reach, and video is on the second. So you have text, and then you have, no, actually, sorry, that's the third. So you have text, you have PDFs, which is insanely good right now. Sharing PDFs of slides that you've run a workshop, or sharing those PDFs right now is insane. It's just the same reach as text. And then you have videos, and I kind of believe videos is really going to take up the upper hand in the coming weeks or in the coming months. Got
it. I haven't heard about PDF, so that's a new information for me. But maybe we can talk about the reach of the LinkedIn algorithm itself. I know you've mentioned it before, but I have one question. What is a LinkedIn pod, first of all, for people who are listening? If you can define that for us, and talk about LinkedIn pods for a second.
So we talked about you know, if you post something, it kind of goes through these 3 phases, right? It scans for what it is. It scans for this first 3 engagements, or the first 3 to 6%, see who is relevant, and then it kind of scans for engagement, basically. And the more engagement you get within the first hours, the more it will show it to relevant people. So for LinkedIn pods, it's basically a way to artificially you know, boost your content in a way that it still, you know, looks good, I would say. So what it is basically is just a way, it's just, you know, you can have it everywhere. You can have it on LinkedIn, you can have it in Slack. I see a lot of people doing that in Slack. We used to do it in Telegram, but we moved. So it's basically a chat with, if you would look at it from a very broad perspective, it's just a chat with people that share relevant content just like you. And once you post, you put in the link of the LinkedIn URL inside the pod, and you ask them to engage for a little bit to trick the algorithm that you're getting more engagement, and for you to share your content with a lot more people.
Got it. And so is this a group, or how does it actually look like inside LinkedIn?
It depends, right? I mean, some people run it on as a LinkedIn chat, I would say. There's a lot of rumor that LinkedIn can track this, and then that's why some people move to Telegram, because it's encrypted, and so LinkedIn doesn't know where it comes from. Or when you click the link, that they don't know where it's coming from. Slack is not encrypted, so they kind of know where it's coming from. There's a lot of rumors around that, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And it's very unclear for everybody how LinkedIn is perceiving this. I do know that there's an extension actually, which is funny, that can actually track which extension you're using for LinkedIn automation, basically. So there's even extensions for that, but that's off topic. But it's basically, if you would look at it, it's just a chat. It's just a chat where you would sit with friends that are also sharing relevant content, and you would ask them, hey, like you would do normally, say, hey, I just wrote a post, could you read it or like it or whatever it is. I still see some people doing that in email. They just wrote a new LinkedIn post, and then they send an email to the whole company saying, hey, can you can you like this post so we can reach more people? So it kind of depends on company, and depends on you as a person as well.
Got it. What do you think about tagging people inside the post once you write a post, and then maybe you say something like, what do you think, guys, and tag somebody relevant for that post? Does that work to kind of get the engagement from those people inside your network?
You could, but it cuts it's a two-way stream, right?
Yeah.
If you would tag me every single time, I would say, come on, guy, please stop. If I know you very well, for example, and it's a really relevant post where I can share my thoughts, that would make sense, basically.
Got it.
They're going for beers.
Got it. So maybe a final thing I wanted to ask you is about automation. So I know there's a bunch of tools like DuckSoup and all that. Do you use automation in LinkedIn? And I know there's been cases where people got banned, and it's a tricky thing to do. So what kind of software do you use right now? And what do you think about all the automation tools on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so we used to do a lot of LinkedIn automation back in the days. Before we knew how LinkedIn worked, we run tons of automations. Even the worst thing we did, I think, was sending out LinkedIn requests with gated content, which is basically, here's a link to my landing page, and just subscribe. That was very noobish.
Some people do it still, so that's fine.
So that's fine. But we were at that stage as well, to be honest. And we kind of realized that after sending all those messages, we had 0 signups, we had 0 relationships built, and we had lost a lot of time, because we were just, also you only get one shot, right? You can get the request done and then request it again, but you kind of lose your face if you would run this automation, basically. So we did a lot of extensions. We used to work with a lot of extensions like DuckSoup. We use DuckSoup Turbo, not for LinkedIn automation, but to gather data, basically. So Turbo is amazing because they have a Zapier integration, and it's about 55 euros a month, but it just saves me a lot of time. And you can basically go to profiles, scan all the profiles, and shoot that data to wherever you want, which could be your CRM system. If you want to update your CRM system with relevant data, you could use that to run automations on. You can find email addresses at the same time and send them emails. So we use that for data gathering, and also a little bit of automation, but you don't get stats from it. And if you work with clients, they need to know okay, how many people did we connect to it? What kind of relevant messages did we get? Did we get an off connection rate? Yes, no. Did people answer positively? So we don't use extensions anymore. Only for data gathering. The only thing we use is is based on our servers, basically. So it's not on our computers. We use Orca, for example, because it's on our own servers, basically, or on their servers. It's not on our laptop. It's on an extension. So LinkedIn cannot really figure out. They cannot see if you're using automation. And the other one we're using is Growth Leads because it has a Zapier integration, which works beautifully with, if you want to connect it to your HubSpot CRM, if you want to connect it with, if you want to see what kind of messages came back from your automation, and you get that into your CRM system, which is just beautifully works together.
Got it. So that was Orca you've mentioned, or how do you spell that?
Use Orca.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So why don't you tell us what are your clients actually at the end of the day? Like, who's your clients? Are they ordering like leads from you, or do they want to build their own profiles? And how can they reach out to you? Perhaps before that, I always ask people, when do you go to sleep and when do you start your day? Just to kind of benchmark myself.
Yeah. So I used to be a morning person. I used to wake up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. The thing is, once you have family and all that kind of stuff, that doesn't really work because, the person sleeping next to you doesn't want to wake up at 3 o'clock. I actually bought my Fitbit because I realized that you can use that as a wake-up call. The problem is that she would wake up faster from the Fitbit, which I was wearing, than I would do. So that didn't really kind of work out. So so I kind of decided that I wanted to become like the normal guy again. So I wake up at 6:30 together with my girlfriend. And then she goes to sleep around 10, 11, and I work until, whatever it has to be, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I wake up together with her. That's the rule. We need to wake up together. So the longer I work, the less chance I make to really wake up with her. And that's where I get punished. Not punished, but where she wakes me up and say it's 6:30, let's get up. It's like, okay, I'm getting there. So the longer I wait, the longer I kind of ruin myself in the morning.
So you only get like 2 or 3 hours per sleep per day, right? It's
it depends. There's days where I go together and sleep together, I would say at 11. So then I have my full hour of sleep. Sometimes I just need to run with projects and things need to finish. So I work until what it takes.
Got it. That's crazy. I would die probably because I need like 6 hours or I am not functioning the next day.
There's coffee.
Exactly. Yeah. And so one question. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just one quick last question, maybe what's some favorite business app you use other than Slack, maybe something that people don't know, you use maybe for your daily life, Fitbit maybe, but also workflow or something like that?
Good question. I think the lifesaver for me has been Zapier. I think Zapier is my go-to tool for everything. I try to automate as much as I can. So we have automations running on people that subscribe to an ebook and then they visited my landing page, for example. I know that you went to certain pages, so I got a notification from it. So I really love this whole automation flows. And we connected, for example, with Albacross, which is an IP identifier. So we see which companies visit our website, and then we can reach out if they fit into our ICP, which is just beautifully. So I think Zapier has been a lifesaver for me.
Got it. Any books you read recently that are kind of interesting?
I think I'm reading 2 books. One I just finished, which is Good to Great, from Jim. I forgot his name. Jim something. Good to Great. And I think I just love the concept of the hedgehog, which is basically saying try to figure out where you want to be the best at and where you can actually make money from, and then also build a team around it, and where you can really be the best in. I think a lot of companies are failing to see that they're trying to be all over the place, and we're just trying to focus on a very narrow niche, very narrow stuff, so we can be the best at that and then scale from there. But we don't want to be everything at the same time, because that's a little bit the problem that every company faces now. They're like, we're trying to do everything, but we're not doing anything right.
Got it. And so last thing, where do you want people who listen to this go? Like you guys do this as a service, as I understand. So who are your kind of ideal customers, and what can you promise them?
Yeah, so we work with clients as Travel Perk, which could be, they're in Barcelona, for example, but we only work with B2B software companies. And it kind of depends. So we work best with what we call transactional or self-service companies, which is self-service, you could say, like an Asana, which there's no human touches, I would say. Well, they have the sales team, but later on the stage, most people are not at the Asana stage yet. So that's the self-service part or the transactional part, where where marketing is really looking for leads and sending them to the sales qualified leads to the team, which is the inbound sales. You could just compare that to HubSpot, for example. We work less with enterprise companies. We'll be focusing that later on, but we're focusing now on transactional and self-service parts.
Got it. We do something similar because we do a similar service for kind of mid-sized companies, but they have a bunch of salespeople and we are generating sales qualified leads, but not we don't serve the market you are in, so it's a good fit. So
perfect fit.
So okay, cool. So everybody, this was Ricardo. Make sure to watch him on LinkedIn, and he's a cool guy. So check out his posts. He has a lot of comments and likes, and he definitely knows what's up with LinkedIn. So thank you very much, Ricardo, for coming, and enjoy those beers right now, or whatever you guys are up to.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye bye.
Ciao.